That's why I believe in podcasting so much as an intuitive business strategy, because it's so tied to your voice and your stories and your experiences, your authenticity. It does fall into an intuitive business strategy when you pair it with how you grow your business. If you are doing what I call a branded podcast, branded podcasts aren't just for big, huge names. They are for any business that wants to tie their podcast to the same message.
Hi, I'm Christina Barcy. Welcome to the Boss Goddess podcast. This is your invitation to step out of the hustle and into your purpose and passion. What's my secret? Podcasting. This is how I've up-leveled my life on multiple occasions when I was ready to bring my dreams to life. And it's how I help my clients realize their big dreams. This is where you become the boss goddess in your niche and gently bring your dreams to life. Before we jump into this episode, I have a question for you. Are you a new coach who's feeling genuinely called to starting your own podcast, but you're getting overwhelmed the second it turns into a content hamster wheel of daily posts on social media, lots of clips, and starting a YouTube channel? I'm here to tell you that most successful podcasters did not begin with video. They started with audio and grew from there. You don't need fancy equipment. You don't need to start with a YouTube channel. And you don't even need to be on social media when you're starting your podcast. You just need to get clear on these three things. What success looks like for you when getting started, what matters now in the beginning and what doesn't, and how audio podcasting builds the very foundation for your new business. That's why I created a free audio podcasting action plan that will help you create a simple, grounded roadmap so you can start in the way that makes sense for you, your energy, and your budget so that you can let go of all that noise. You can download the simple action plan at boss-goddess.co/action plan and start mapping out your aligned starting point right now, because podcasting works best when it's serving you, not the other way around. You can grab it at boss-goddess.co/action plan or just click the link in the show notes. Now back to our episode. So about a year ago, I put out an episode called What is an Intuitive Business Strategy? And it was actually the first episode I released after rebranding this podcast from Be Bold Begin to Boss Goddess. And since I just updated our website to better reflect the direction boss-goddess.co is going in, our mission and our offerings, I thought now would be a good time to revisit this and clarify once again what intuitive business actually means. So our homepage on the website actually has a definition for it, but I thought it would be fun to see what Google had to say. And this is what the AI summary came up with. An intuitive business is a purpose-driven enterprise that integrates gut instinct, emotional intelligence, and energy alignment with traditional strategic planning. It prioritizes authentic connection and internal alignment over rigid, purely analytical or high-pressure strategies, aiming for sustainable growth, fulfillment, and soulful alignment, with bullet points that include intuitive decision-making, aligned strategy, authentic connection, and energy management. These definitions from this AI overview sound like I wrote them myself. So I had to share them with you. And for the bullet points, I find their individual AI descriptions really interesting as well. In fact, they look like I wrote them myself. So I'm going to read them to you. I'm going to read three of them. One is aligned strategy. And it says, designing business goals and marketing strategies that feel authentic and resonate with personal values rather than just following, for example, typical SMART goals. I love that because I talk about that all the time. And for authentic connection, it says, building deep, meaningful relationships with clients and community rather than purely transactional ones, often using intuition to guide branding. And this one I talk about a lot, that the AI overview defined as energy management.
And it says focusing on the energy, passion, and well-being of the founder as a critical driver for success. Oh, wow. I've been talking about this for so long that it's pretty cool that that I'm not alone, that I can actually Google it and it has all these definitions that literally sound like I wrote them myself. So if any of this resonates with you, then you are in the right place. And I'll share, I had no idea that these definitions existed outside of my own distillation of how I wanted to shift into creating my business and how I wanted to create ways and strategies and programs so that you can approach your business creation and growth in this way, because it started to feel unsustainable to me to do it any other way. So it's very cool to see that, one, I intuitively tapped into a process that exists and combines what I call soul and strategy, and that I'm not alone in this conversation about building an intuitive business. So one of the major personal experiences that led me to this realization, and I thought I made the term up, I was calling it intuitive business strategy. I thought I made it up. I didn't, obviously, which is, I think, very cool, because I'm not the only one having this conversation with myself, right? And now with you. So again, one of my major personal experiences that led me to this realization and leaning into what I'm calling intuitive business was my own experience with burnout. And I've talked about this before, but there were several factors that contributed to getting me to that point. But when it came down to getting out of the burnout, one of my biggest realizations was that it actually wasn't that I was doing too much necessarily. My first instinct was to just I must be doing too much. I must need to clear my plate more. That there were just too many things that were on my plate. But what I realized was that there were too many things that were on my plate that did not contribute to my fulfillment. That was the key. That was the big realization that changed my approach. It really became about the quality of the things I spent my time and energy on versus the quantity. And I started realizing that I should maybe start with reconnecting with what I call my zone of genius, which are the things that light me up and that feel energizing to me versus things that I'm excellent at, but I have a finite amount of energy for, in which will eventually drain me. So then I could start to calibrate my day a little bit differently. And it's a slow process. And I just slowly started to do a little bit more of the stuff that was energizing and slightly less of the other stuff. That was my very slow but steady secret to moving myself out of burnout. And most processes are an ebb and flow process. You take a few steps forward and you take a few steps back, which is part of why it's slow. But the other reason is that I think we live in a society where we kind of approach things with all or nothing energy, and then we get kind of stuck. So the way to not do that is to just allow it to be a really gradual, incremental shift. And it does take longer, but it does work. That's the difference. And that's kind of how all of this works. That's how you build habits and sustainable processes, is really allowing it to start really small and doable. Just one tiny adjustment over here, one tiny adjustment over there, doing that for a while, and then allowing it to shift again when it's time. And part of that is the intuitiveness, being in tune with yourself enough to know, staying aware of how it's going for you. It's why I love journal practices. But then we kind of see where we can adjust again, like turn the volume up a little bit more with the fulfilling stuff, and where can we let go of something over here in the stuff that's more draining. Oftentimes we have big jobs on our plates or multiple jobs. I mean, a lot of us do a lot of different things. And oftentimes it doesn't make a lot of sense to just scratch out a whole chunk of your life out of the blue. So I want to share that that's an unrealistic approach. You don't need to do that. You don't need to suddenly, quit that job that you hate, or the one that feels like maybe this is just too much. And maybe you can do that. Maybe you can just quit that job. But for most of us, I think it's more like, well, can I approach this a little differently for a while so I can create more, brain space to do something that feels more fulfilling to me? Or it's like that kind of shift at first until you can slowly wean yourself away from the things that do need to go, but might take a minute for you to get to maybe the financial place where you can let go of it. Or, there's a lot of letting go that happens internally as well, even if we don't like something. So I just want to put that out there because it is a process, but it really was an aha moment that it wasn't just clearing my plate. It was really about what I was spending my time doing and how those things were spending my energy. I was talking with a friend the other day, actually, and he was sharing about his experience in leaving a job and starting a new career in something totally different, and how the previous career he was in just felt like he had to put on a mask every day just to do the job. And my response was, I told him that I totally relate, because having to show up inauthentically on a regular basis is immensely draining. Because I believe that our fulfillment is tied to our authenticity. Now, speaking of a year ago, when I first rebranded this podcast, I was coming back from taking a year off from putting out episodes. I paused the podcast for maybe a little over a year because, again, I thought that clearing my plate would help get some of my energy back. But it was actually showing up again in creating the podcast, where it gave me the space to be in my authenticity and share all of the things that were changing. That was how I tapped into my fulfilling energy source again. That podcast is where I get to express myself authentically. It's where I get to show up and feel fulfilled when I'm, working on the show and creating episodes and sharing with you about what's really going on and creating strategies, not just for myself, but for others. Removing that from my day-to-day, it didn't help me feel more energized. It took something away that gave me that sense of authenticity and fulfillment. And even though I was doing less, it made almost zero difference in how I was feeling. So it actually felt better to come back and be on the mic again and find ways to just prioritize differently so that I could include and keep the activities on my schedule that did feel good to me. This podcast brings me so much fulfillment. So it's why I believe in podcasting so much as an intuitive business strategy. This is a personal experience for me that I just shared with you and how it brings me fulfillment. But because it's so tied to your voice and your stories and your experiences, your authenticity, it does fall into an intuitive business strategy when you pair it with how you grow your business. If you are doing what I call a branded podcast, branded podcasts aren't just for big, huge names. They are for any business that wants to tie their podcast to the same message. And I just rebranded to align that even further for myself and the way I want to create next. They are supporting each other. The Boss Goddess podcast directly connects with and supports the boss-goddess.co business. They're now aligning to be the same thing. So this is what I'm wanting to share with you. It's what I do for my clients and my agency that I've done for almost 9 years. I know how to do it well. And the beauty of doing it for solopreneurs or entrepreneurs that have smaller teams or are working on your own, coaches, healers, guides, service providers, course creators. For us, this gets to be a really personal experience if we want it to be. And I think the thing with those types of professions, coaching, healing, guiding, it's such a part of who we are. So this is again why it becomes so aligned to use a trust building platform like podcasting that's long form, where you get to be authentic and share who you are and your messaging and your stories and your experiences and your value and your wisdom. It just makes a lot of sense. It creates space for your authenticity to be expressed. It starts with your connection with yourself through storytelling and sharing your experiences. And that's why it's intuitive. Podcasting builds deep, meaningful relationships with your listener community and your potential clients, which was defined in that authentic connection bullet point earlier by the AI in that definition of intuitive business. And the way I teach podcasting will allow you to focus on your energy, your passion, and well-being as the founder of your critical driver for success, focusing on fulfillment over rigid, high-pressure strategies. I like to call it the you behind the do. And again, that last part was just that definition again. And it's like, it fits so perfectly into how I talk about podcasting and how I talk about business and how the two support each other when they're aligned. So if you're just starting a business, layering in a process like podcasting to develop sustainable growth for your business that honors you in its approach can be the strategy that gets to ground everything in the business. It can all really create that foundation and that process that establishes how you approach things. So we have some exciting things that I'm developing to support your intuitive business coming very soon. So stay tuned to find out how you can learn more. But until then, please know that it does get to feel good. You can build for fulfillment, and your intuition already knows where to lean in to create that. And it's safe to trust it. Till next time. Thank you so much for listening to the Boss Goddess podcast. If you enjoyed this episode and found it valuable, please share it with someone in your life who would also benefit. Word of mouth is still the best way to share podcasts. And I would also love to hear from you in the form of a review on Apple Podcasts. This really helps new listeners discover the show as well. And it makes this process for me so much more fulfilling to hear from you. Wishing you lots of love and magic. Until next time.